All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. I am Megan Shargorodsky with the Kentucky Climate Center, and I will be both moderating and doing the webinar today. So welcome to the Kentucky Monthly Climate Perspective on Drought and Hydrologic Conditions for October 2022. This is a project that brings together many resources and many partners, and we are incredibly thankful for all of them. You're familiar with our partner, Matt Dixon, that is with the UK Ag Weather Center at the University of Kentucky, as well as Chip Zimmer with the Division of Water for the state. Just a little bit of information. Again, this is a group effort. We all come together to put this on and work hard to make sure that we can get the information out to everybody. This has been initially funded by the National Integrated Drought Information System and is in coordination with the Midwest Drought Early Warning System. As usual, the next regularly scheduled webinar will be the first Thursday of the month. The next one coming up will be Thursday, November 3rd at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central. And this is right before the time change. So this is still in daylight time. This webinar will be recorded and available for viewing as a live stream on our Kentucky Climate Center YouTube channel. The background image here is from one of our Kentucky Mesonet webcams, and as you can see, we had some beautiful colors in the sky, as well as some beautiful colors starting to change in the trees. And so as we are moving deeper into fall and actually having some great fall weather, we are looking forward to having more and more of this transition. Just a quick outline of the webinar today. We will go over some of the recent conditions and observations that we have seen here in Kentucky and in the region. We will discuss some of the impacts, including the agriculture impacts. We will look at the outlooks for precip and temperature and La Nina, as well as concluding with a summary and a period for questions and discussion. Here on the left are again two more Kentucky Mesonet stations. The top one I thought was in particular very kind of fun for it being October. It looks a little bit spooky, and we have some cows that are hanging out first thing in the morning. It's pretty typical to see a low-lying fog this time of year, especially. So I thought that one was fun. And then on the bottom is actually the outer clouds from Hurricane Ian. And so this is a station that's in Eastern Kentucky and Pulaski County. So that was really neat to be able to see the outer clouds and bands of Hurricane Ian as they move past Kentucky. And as we move forward, you'll see the impacts from Ian in this past month. So looking at some of the observations that we have seen in October, this was one of the most notable 7-day radar estimated precip and observed maps that I have ever seen. It has been incredibly rare that we have zeros across the board. And these are real zeros. This is no rain within the past week at the western 2/3 of the state. The only parts of the state that saw any rain were the far eastern reaches of the state. And this was, again, from Hurricane Ian as it moved across the eastern part of the US. Looking at the 30-day of the same image, we see that Eastern Kentucky does have a bit more rain. We have 1 to 3 or 4 inches over there. But as you start moving either in the middle of the state or toward the west, we do have very little rainfall. One thing that was noted earlier was that even though our Kentucky Mesonet stations may have totals on this map, there are still some sections of the individual counties that may have much less. So that is clearly reflected as we move forward and look at some of the drought indicators in a little bit. Looking at the 60-day, you can again see that there are a couple patches in Western Kentucky that only have had this 1 to 2 inch rainfall in the state. And so that is based off of the radar imagery from that area. So this is an area that has been of most concern. Again, you can look over toward northern Kentucky, and you do see that the rainfall has picked up, as that area did receive a pretty heavy amount of rain. In eastern Kentucky, you can see that one of our stations says 0.77, and that's because the station went offline during this period. Going back even further for the 90-day, this is going back to the beginning of July. So this does include the extreme heavy rainfall that we saw in eastern Kentucky. And as you can see in some of those areas, we do see 13, 14, even 15, and even up to 18 inches in Black Mountain. As we look over in eastern Kentucky, comparing to the west, where we have 6.56 inches in Graves County. That is kind of reflecting in the fact at how much we have not seen rainfall in this part of the state. So it has been reflected way back even throughout the entire rest of the summer. Looking at the monthly to seasonal precipitation, this is the departure from normal this time, not observed. So this is again highlighting that area of dryness in western Kentucky, and even over the past 30 days, we've had some excessive dryness that is below normal across the center section of the state of Kentucky. Only certain areas in a few patches in eastern Kentucky that are at normal. So overall, Kentucky averaged about 2 inches of rainfall in September, which is about 1.5 inches below normal. And looking at year to date, the rainfall total has been 42.34 inches as a statewide average, which is nearly 5 inches above normal. So even though we have had these periods of dryness and have had this excessive precipitation in the east and excessive drought and a severe drought in the west, we have still somehow averaged to be above normal. A lot of that is from the heavy precipitation we saw earlier in the year before spring began. And as we are moving forward, you'll see that this is a repeated message. Looking at the temperature departures, this is from the Midwestern Regional Climate Center. This is looking at the average minimum temperatures on the right and the departure from mean. So we've actually had temperatures that have been a bit cooler than normal with respect to the minimum temperatures. So it has been a little bit cooler overnight. Our dew points have been pretty low for this time of year. So we are getting cooler overnight. The image on the left is the 30-day departure from normal temperature as an average. And so you can see that there are certain pockets that are having just at or above normal temperatures. And those are generally those dry areas that have not had the precipitation like in the eastern part of the state. So overall, the September temperatures ran close to normal across the board. So it was about 68.5 Fahrenheit. It was the 67th warmest September preliminarily. And that puts that right in the middle of that 127-year record. So we're right in the middle of it all. And the comparing to some of the other months, it has been, or some of the other years, it was slightly cooler than 2021, slightly warmer than 2020, but much cooler than 2019, which was the year that we last saw one of the flash droughts in the fall. And so that was the second warmest. So September, it's nice that we're actually having some fall weather, and we're seeing again the nice tree changes in the leaves, and we're able to actually enjoy our fall instead of going from really, really hot to really, really wet and cold. So enjoy it while you can. Looking at the US Drought Monitor, this is something that has been closely monitored over the whole summer, really. the drought conditions in Kentucky. And so the western part of the state has really had this prolonged drought conditions. However, just this past week, these three little fingers of abnormally dry conditions have appeared in Kentucky. And so looking more closely at this, it looks a little different here. So as you're looking again in the western part of the state, we have severe drought, and then these areas of abnormally dry conditions. And this is also reflected in some of the weather conditions that we've been seeing as well. So combining that together proves to be a problem in a few different areas that I'll get to in a minute. Looking at the drought monitor class change over the past 8 weeks, not a whole lot has changed in Western Kentucky. However, we have had this expansion of the abnormally dry conditions in a good portion of the rest of the state. Moving on to soil moisture and stream flows. There are some areas that are having some flow problems, and if Chip was on, he would be able to tell whether or not these are seasonal. So I am sorry that I can't detail that, but you can see from the maps on the right, the 7-day and 28-day average, there are some orange and yellow or red or dark red that are there. So knowing some of those areas, I think some of those are not seasonal, but if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with him and he should be able to detail that a little bit better. So on the left side, we have the calculated soil moisture anomaly, which is the difference from the expectation. So you can see that in the eastern part of the state, again, we are seeing still wet conditions from the flooding that we saw in July, as well as some of the other rain that has happened since then. And that's also reflected a bit in the NASA image that's in the bottom left. You can see that there are some areas, the area over Louisville always seems like it is red. So I think that is an urban effect, but everywhere else seems to be on par. Looking more specifically at the Kentucky Mesonet soil moisture, we have soil moisture probes at 5 depths. So on the left, we have 2 stations that are in Western Kentucky, and on the right, we have 2 stations that are in Central Kentucky. And you can see that on the left, again, we've not had very much rainfall over the past 30 days. This is about 1 month of a window for these graphs. And even though they do have a few periods of precipitation, this is less than 1/10 of an inch. So we are not seeing very much rain over there. And even when we had, it's been several weeks since we've seen any. On the right, there were a few more events that happened. There was a line that came through the state and that had some rain with it. And then there have been a few other smaller showers that have happened. Overall, it is still really dry out. And that has led to some issues with fire weather. The recent strong winds from the systems that move through, combined with the dry conditions, has made a really tough start to the start of the fall forest fire hazard season that began on October 1st, so the end of last week. So this has resulted in burn bans popping up across the state. A lot of Western Kentucky counties and municipalities do have burn bans in effect, so please check, make sure that you don't have one. And then there are some that have started popping up in Central Kentucky. So one of the bigger issues has been combine fires as people are harvesting at the end of the season. That combined with the really dry conditions has been a huge problem. The image here on the left is from the Bowling Green Daily News, and this was a fire in a field in Simpson County. And this had multiple fire departments came to help contain this fire, and many acres were burned. So I know that this has been a common story across, especially Western Kentucky. So please keep this in mind. You can see on this observed fire danger class based off of the RAWS stations, not Kentucky Mesonet. These are demonstrating that there are either high or very high fire danger classes. Looking back the past 30 days for storm reports, it was a relatively quiet September. We did not have a whole lot of weather activity aside from there was the hurricane that the remnants that hit far eastern Kentucky. There was a couple other events, as you can see here. So September 5th, there was some roadway flooding in Taylor and Barron County as there was a storm that passed through. September 22nd, there were strong winds in northern Kentucky and there was some damage reported there. And then September 25th, there was a pretty strong line that came through the state. And this actually resulted in hail being reported in Grayson. And with that, I'm actually going to toss it over to Matt Dixon with the UK Ag Weather Center to talk a little bit about our ag impacts.
All right. Thanks, Megan. You know, you talked a little bit about it earlier, going back to 2019. If we rewind the tape back to that year, we averaged 0.22 inches in September that month. Good for the driest September in Kentucky history. 127-year record, so very significant. That year, harvest was nonstop. Moisture levels, fire issues were definitely a problem. I remember there were water tankers being hauled to the field just in case there were fire issues at the time. Pastures were absolutely torched. We were feeding hay. Stockpiling was non-existent. And in many cases, it wasn't even worth to even try to get a fall cutting with the cost of fuel. So farm ponds, creeks, streams were running low. Some were hauling water to their livestock. Bottom line, we were in trouble at that time. Luckily, October came in 2019, and the state averaged 6.34 inches, good for our fourth wettest October on record. So we went from our our all-time driest September on record to our fourth wettest October on record. Unfortunately, Megan, I don't want to steal your thunder. It doesn't look like we're going that route here in 2022. So fast forward to now, this was our dry September since 2019. Again, roughly 2 inches on average across the state. I did talk to Tom Miller beforehand, before I got on this call out in Ballard County. He mentioned to me that he didn't see a drop in September. So it really depends on the location. Western Kentucky has definitely been drier than others. The biggest difference between 2019 and 2022 has been temperatures. Megan mentioned that earlier. We were very close to normal in 2022, but in 2019, we saw our second warmest September on record, about 6 degrees above normal. That month, highs in the low to middle 90s were common. Very common. There were several days in the upper 90s. So that took the drought to another level in many instances. But in some aspects, looking at agriculture, we've been worse in 2019. Some instances better. Hearing from some of the agents out there in Western Kentucky that this will be some of the worst corn and bean yields since 2012, mainly along that southern Pennyroyal and Purchase region out there. So a little farther north, and they're looking a little bit better. Once again, talked to Tom before the call. Sounds like they hit a good rain right before pollination. But whenever you have two separate 1 month long periods where you don't see much of anything, you're definitely going to have impacts. So looking at progress, we're running slightly behind the 5-year pace for corn and bean harvest. But again, Tom mentioned this was mainly due to the crop getting in the ground late. So there will definitely be some ground made up this upcoming week with little in the way of rainfall, in addition to just the past 3 weeks of dry weather. So the extension agent, going along with planning being delayed, the extension agent down in Trigg County, Graham, he mentioned one of the bigger farmers down there didn't start shelling corn until September 9th. So Later in the year, saying that with 3 combines and the lower yields that are anticipated, they'll catch up pretty quickly. All that said, with how dry it's been, Megan mentioned it, watch out for fire issues with multiple burn bans in place. So keep that in the back of your mind. You're out in the fields. Looking at pastures, I'm hearing more and more instances of producers feeding hay. Sounds like the moisture in early September combined with the cooler temperatures carried much of Kentucky, at least for a couple, maybe 3 weeks in September. Again, Western Kentucky missed out on a bunch of that. But pastures across the state are really starting to struggle now. It's not a great time for accumulating forage growth for winter grazing. Something we'd like to see at this time of year is just not happening. Hay supplies, according to the last crop report, still rated 70% adequate and 12% surplus heading into the winter season, but I'm still hearing some worry from folks. We'll see what happens during the month of October, but on top of everything, I put down there the average date of first freeze. In years past, it's occurred pretty late into October, early November. This year, not so much. We're looking at some pretty cool temperatures this upcoming weekend as we have a couple cold fronts move through the area. I mention this every year. Keep cattle off the pastures if they contain Johnson grass. Can be toxic to the animals after a frost. You really don't want to let them out there if there is Johnson grass until it's completely dried down. Looking ahead, harvest will be full go. Based on the forecast, Megan, you'll go over the outlooks. I know there's some hope and possibly some above normal precipitation a week or two out, but based on how dry it is, it does take a little bit for the rain to start cranking again. But we need some rain with wheat. It's going to start going in the ground here pretty soon over the next 2 or 3 weeks. Once again, unfortunately, we'll see what happens with those forecasts. Doesn't look great. We want another wet month of October like we saw in 2019, but I don't think it's really shaping up that way this year. So with that, I'm going to send it back to Megan. You can go over the outlooks and whatnot.
Sounds great. Thank you, Matt. So let's jump into the forecast. So looking at the next 7 days, we do have a slight chance for a little bit of rain, but it's unfortunately still relatively dry. So looking at the 6 to 10 day outlook, our temperatures are looking to be just a bit above normal as we go into this next October 11th through 15th. It's also right on the edge of whether or not we will be near normal precipitation or above for this time of year. Near normal means not much at all. So anything will be welcome, as Matt just mentioned. Looking a bit farther out to the 8 to 14 day, we are looking to see temperatures be below normal and precipitation be at or near normal. So again, this probability is trying to communicate that it's not saying that it will be near normal, but that it is essentially equal chances. Same thing here as we are looking at the month as a whole. For October, we are seeing roughly probably equal chances, both in particularly in temperature, but as we move toward the western part of the state that is drier, we do see an increase in the possibility of above normal temperatures. Looking over at the precipitation, we are seeing quite a large stripe of below normal precipitation expected as we're looking at October as a whole. So unfortunately, that's not what that area wants to hear at all. So hopefully we will be able to get a little bit of rainfall, because again, below normal doesn't mean no rainfall, but it doesn't mean that it's not possible. So as we're moving forward, we can hopefully get a little bit of rainfall in that area. Given all of the talk in September about Fiona and Ian, I wanted to bring this to the table. Thankfully, the Atlantic Basin has calmed down quite a bit. These are both systems that are likely going to stay away from the US. So these shouldn't be an issue, but it's always important to keep an eye out just in case, because they do tend to impact our weather in the end. Jumping back to the seasonal outlook. So this is the September, October, November period. Oh, sorry, this is October, November, December period. We are looking at, again, moving into a fall and winter that has above normal temperatures and equal chances or just below normal precipitation. And a lot of that feeds back into this. This is the La Nina outlook. And as we've talked about the past several webinars, we are looking at a triple dip or a third consecutive year of having La Nina conditions in the Pacific Ocean. And unfortunately, that greatly impacts us here in Kentucky. And so as we are looking at that feeds directly into the seasonal outlook. So if you can remember how we were the past couple of years going into December, in particular last year, when we did have really warm temperatures at the start of December, it is something that I can't say that that exact scenario will happen again with regard to temperatures, but it is something. It is one of the impacts that we see as a result of La Nina and that disturbance in where the jet stream is. Looking at the seasonal drought outlook, we are, again, most of the state is likely to not have persistent drought except for that western area of the state. We are seeing that slowly get worse as it is longer and longer without rainfall. So again, hopefully we will get just even a small amount of rain in that area would do a whole lot, I know. And I think Tom is still on, and I'm sure he would echo that. So hopefully we can get that precipitation as the winter wheat is being planted and be able to have a productive crop from that. So I mentioned fire potential. So this is the wildland fire potential for the US, and this is for October of 2022. You can see that it is not in Kentucky at this time for above normal. However, going out 2 months to November 2022, it does expand across a lot of the state. And I looked back over a handful of our November and October webinars, and I haven't really seen it expand across the state this much. So, and this time of year. So it's something to keep in mind. Again, this is still a month or two out. So it may likely change as we move forward, but if we do continue to have these dry conditions that do not get substantial rainfall, then we might be looking at this as we move into November. So in summary, overall in September, we had below normal rainfall and near normal temperatures for the month. The drought conditions are slightly worsening in the state as we continue to have drier weather, and it's of particular concern as we face fall fire season. And seasonal outlooks hint at below normal precipitation and above normal temperatures for the fall, but also a little risk of drought development. And again, for the third winter in a row, we are leaning toward the possibility of La Nina conditions. So keep that in mind as we are moving forward in the year. As a wrap up, thank you so much. And if you have any questions or want to discuss something a little bit further, feel free to either type it in the chat box or unmute yourself and we can talk about it. And Matt is also here still, so he can talk about any of the ag concerns.
I was just going to say, this is Tom Miller in Ballard County. I was just going to say, this is the worst I've ever seen it here since at least the mid 80s. 2012 was dry, but we'd already had a hurricane come through by now. We had one in late August that kind of rescued the soybeans and but the ponds and the grass, I don't think I've ever seen it as bad as it is right now.
That's horrible. I'm so sorry that it is hitting your county so hard. I know that across the river that Missouri has had it pretty rough over there as well. So, again, hopefully we can get some rain that will help. I don't know at what point the rain, like how much rain you would need for it to really be helpful, but at least hopefully something.
At least any would green some of the
Yeah.
grass back up, I think.
Yeah, it's a huge concern right now because it is really dry in our because we have been seeing those lower minimum temperatures, and our dew point is so low that our relative humidity during the day has been in the 20% range in some areas. So I know that combination doesn't help either. So any other questions or feedback? I see a question from Shane Hollandy in the chat, asking Matt, I assume, did the onset of the current dry spell negatively impact late soybeans?
Once again, and let's see, did he hop off? I guess he did. Tom hopped off. But anyways, once again, I talked to Tom and Graham before I got on this call, and the 2 separate months of having mostly dry conditions has been pretty terrible. The yields coming in on full season beans has been hit and miss. We're definitely not going to see any records like we have the past few years. I think it was Tom that mentioned, let me see, double crops will be very bad this year. Maybe in some instances enough blooms held on, but once again, this month-long period of dry conditions hit at the wrong time. So in agriculture, it's always about timely rainfall. You hit that timely rainfall, your crop's probably going to be all right. You don't see that timely rainfall and you're going to be in big trouble. So yeah, I'm, like he just said, worse since the 80s. I know Graham said worse since 2012. No matter how you put it, this is a bad year for corn and beans out in Western Kentucky.
I can't remember if you covered this in your ag impacts, but with regard to winter wheat, are there any particular outlooks for how that is expected to do?
I mean, it's going to start going in the ground here this month, and it's all about getting some precipitation on that ground. And I'm still, I was talking to you, Megan, before this presentation. I'm indifferent about these outlooks based on how dry we have been already. So hopefully that 6 to 10 day outlook pans out and we get above normal precipitation across the area. But again, and I know you mentioned this, I mean, this is our driest season of the year. So above normal precipitation isn't quite what it is in, say, May, June, July. So we'll see how much rainfall we get, but it's not looking great right now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to have such long-lasting ag impacts through multiple crop seasons. So hopefully we can at least get one that isn't severely impacted, at least. So All right, any other questions?
Megan, this is Kevin Jeffries from Oldham County. Was just wondering, what about reservoir levels and water sources and things like that, and especially in Western Kentucky, are those becoming impacting where they're having problem with watering cattle and things like that?
So that is a great question for Chip, who is not here today. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I know that they were dealing with some reservoir problems in Western Kentucky. But I don't know what the current status of that is. Matt, do you know?
I haven't heard of hydrologic issues yet, but I'll tell you what, and Kevin, maybe you heard about it. I mean, down in along the Mississippi and whatnot.
Right.
I think they're starting to have some trade issues, aren't they?
That's my understanding. Yes. And, at this time of year, that's very impactful for, moving, soybeans, corn and whatever down the Mississippi. So yeah, that's what I had heard last week.
Yeah. So we'll see how that pans out also. So that'll obviously have an impact here in Kentucky too. So, yeah.
Yeah, I had seen some feedback on the barge traffic having a lot of issues. So fingers crossed, water will come.
Right. Okay. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Hey,
Ron,
Megan.
I see. Hey, Ron.
Hey, did you want to mention anything about the Ken 10 coming up for anybody that's interested in that? I know it's, I think, just recently announced.
Absolutely. That's a great point. So on Saturday, October 22nd, we will be participating in, but the National Weather Service is hosting a weather workshop called Ken 10. And this will be located at the Western Kentucky University campus, in one of the science buildings on campus. And so if you are interested, feel free to drive down or drive over and come see. There are going to be some great talks about the December 10th and 11th tornadoes, some about the Waverly flooding that happened in Tennessee in August of 21, as well as the Eastern Kentucky flooding that happened in July. So there will be a lot of really great information. There will be a lot of really really good resources that you can hear about, and a lot of tables. There will be some kids activities that happen in the afternoon, I believe. I think there will be a kids session, so it should be a lot of fun, and I hope that we can see you there. Thanks, Ron, for mentioning that.
Not a problem.
All right, any other questions or announcements, I guess? All right, well, we're going to hope for rain for everybody. Hopefully we will see that. But next regularly scheduled webinar, as I mentioned, is the first Thursday of November, which is November 3rd. And if you have any questions or concerns or want to provide feedback, feel free to email any of the people listed here. Again, we also have a new state climatologist, Jerry Brodsky. He's on the call too. So he has taken the position that Stu Foster had, that I know many of you are very familiar with. So if you ever have any questions to relay to him, I guess next month we'll add his name to this contacts list so that you can get that information. So, all right. With that, we can go ahead and conclude the webinar. Thank you so much for coming, and we'll look forward to chatting again on November 3rd.